YSL.
Sure.
The YSL situation, I started to be very interested in it. It has bored me to sleep. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
I've looked at Fonnie Willis, who's tied up in some other shit. I just can't understand. Please give us a realistic understanding of what's going on with there, and what do you think is going to happen?
So I think the problem with RICO cases, and I've said this quite often, is that RICO cases give prosecutors very, very wide discretion as to what they can bring in and what they can discuss. And the problem is it's like a buffet, and when you have someone that can't stop eating. And that's what happens to prosecutors. So in this case, these prosecutors just they don't want to stop eating. They listed like 600 witnesses, which is
No.
unbelievably ridiculous.
By the way, at a point, they brought up a old YouTube video of mine, tried to enter it after they listed like 400 witnesses. They're like, hey, we want to introduce this last thing. And the judge says, hey, unless the person who actually made the video is down to come here and testify, no. And they're like, and I'm watching this, and like all my media partners sent them. I'm like, I'm not going in there. What the fuck are they talking about? Like, RICO, is this legal where the state could just use a little bit of everything to just pile on to just build a mountain of, hey, this is our narrative and hope you get convicted?
Certainly, that's what they're trying to do. The judge is starting to limit a lot of it. I think that a lot of this should have been addressed before the case even started. And I wouldn't have allowed a lot of the things that are going on. I mean, if this case goes on for a year and a half, and the state just keeps bringing up things that they weren't going to introduce, but now they feel like, oh, I found something. Over a year and a half, they can find whatever. I mean, investigations can keep going on. There has to be some point where there's a cutoff and say, hey, listen, you've provided all the evidence that you're going to provide. Here's the case. Here's what it is. Unless you want to get a mistrial, you're bringing in things that are just not going to come in on the norm, and then you want them in under some auspice of, oh, judge, we just found this and we want this in. To me, the case is completely off the rails. I think a lot of those attorneys are very frustrated. A lot of defense attorneys are very frustrated. I think it's a good team of attorneys, and I think they're trying to control themselves. On the state side, all I have seen are errors on the state side. That doesn't mean they're not going to get a conviction, because they're going to be in court for the next 12 or 13 months. I don't know how a jury is going to remember what was said in the first month of the trial. I don't even know how they're going to do a closing with 600 witnesses to go through what each witness said and to go through the evidence. I mean, the closing could take 2 days for each side. So I think that it was a huge blunder. I think she bit off more than she could chew. I think there were smaller cases that could have been brought that she could have got time on and saved face. But she decided to go for the gusto with this RICO case. And I just don't think it was a smart move. I think she should have taken, small buckets of crimes, charged those crimes, worked out deals or worked out pleas, or gone to trial on some of those cases. But I don't think anything she's doing is smart in this case. I think it's a huge, huge state blunder. And it also shows a lot of weakness in RICO cases in Atlanta. Trump's charged with a RICO case in Atlanta. He just got 3 of the 13 counts against him dismissed. And I think that it shows a lot of weakness on her part. Not to mention, all this other stuff that's going on that's peripheral. I don't think it affects. I think it's poor decision making on her. I think it just demonstrates poor decision making. And I just don't understand why she would want to stay on cases that make her look like there is a bias, or make her look like there is some sort of error on her part. Just pass the case on. It's not that big of a deal to get a different state attorney to handle the case. And it really shows a weakness in her character to keep the case when she should just be, giving it over. And I think she should have given at least the Trump case. She should have passed that one on. And on this RICO case, I think that she just bit off more than she could chew.
So, And going back to Florida, why do you think that doesn't happen there? And another thing, I was wondering, as a as I said, a super lawyer who represents some of the people who are in the worst of positions. We've seen the resolution at this point of and by the way, salute to everybody who has been pointing out to me that XXXTentacion, he has gained the most amount of streams he's ever gotten in his whole career, even though he's been deceased for 6 years. Um,
I represented him in a bond hearing. He was a
really?
good kid. Yeah, nice kid.
W-
Nice kid. I talked to him for a while. He's a good kid.
w-
Very, very. Listen, all my clients have some uniqueness to them, and whenever someone's an artist or a sports figure, they always have interesting backgrounds, interesting takes on things. I thought, I represented DMX very early in my career,
did you?
and
How was
yeah,
that?
and it was amazing. I really, when DMX was on and like just having a conversation with him, Earl, he was really, his dad was a jazz musician. He gave me great stories about his parents. It's just his stories were very, very interesting, and like just his whole, it was a different experience than I thought it was going to be when I first met him. When I first came in, I thought, you just know what you know about DMX, and then when you actually meet the person and they have like more to them, a lot of depth. He was an interesting guy. I thought he was a really, really, and there's another guy I went to war with, Joe Arcapaio in Arizona had it out for him, the sheriff that was ultimately indicted. But then I think he got a pardon too. But him and I would go at it. He'd want to say something about DMX, and I felt, very,
He was
I
living in
take those things
Arizona
personally.
too. You're right.
Yeah, so I take those things personally. And he had an amazing attorney in New York too. And that attorney in New York, I think his daughter is still a defense attorney in New York, and she's awesome too. And it's Murray. I can't remember his last name, but he was a phenomenal attorney and a great guy. We had a lot of conversations about Earl, and he treated Earl DMX. He treated him like he was a relative, and so did his daughter. Like he was part of their family because they represented him for so long. And I really related to that because I get very involved with my clients in terms of their families. I want to know about them.